Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to give it just one more minute here as we let people hop on, but I always like to start this and let everyone just chat in where you're joining us from. I always enjoy seeing that and seeing how far we can go. So we'll give it just one more minute here. I know I am in Indiana. We actually have somewhat nice weather today, so I'm not complaining. It's been pretty hot over here recently, so I like that it's a little bit cooler. Melissa from Indianapolis can probably relate. Awesome. Yeah. Okay, so it's right at noon, so to be kind of cognizant of everyone's time, I'll go ahead and jump in. Just thank you everyone for joining us for our June webinar. I'm so excited to share some really handy and practical tips with you about onboarding and offboarding, just to be able to help with those smooth board transitions and just really helping you bring out the best in your board. So let's get started. So really quickly, I'll introduce myself. I'm LaVon Simpson. I'm the marketing director here at Boardable, but I'm not alone up here today on this virtual stage. I am honored to be able to share that Yvette from Girls Incorporated of Durham was one of our amazing customers and has agreed to join us for that real nonprofit insight. So I'm so grateful for that. Do you want to take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself and share a little bit about your organization?
Yeah, I'd love to. Girls Inc. is a small not-for-profit that does really great big things in our community. So we serve over 1,600 girls in summer camp, after school, March break programming that gives girls skills and tools to take over the world. And we also administer an at-risk Canada prenatal nutrition program to pregnant and parenting women that are in at-risk communities throughout the region. So probably about 400 women a year. So, we're a small, mighty team. And so I am your director of finance, right? I'm the COO, the CEO. I'm the human resource professional, the custodian, the everything under the sun. So I think that's where Boardables kind of comes in. It's that handy helper, help you out. So I'm glad to be here to kind of give you a sort of a small shop view in.
I love that. And I'm sure no one else can relate to being the CEO, the custodian, the finance, the human resources. These days we have to do more with less for sure. But we appreciate you and thank you for joining. So really quickly, I want to go over today's agenda. Our goals today are really simple. We're here to provide actionable tips for you for effectively onboarding new board members and outlining best practices for offboarding departing board members. Plus, we'll sprinkle in a little bit of how Boardable can help along the way. By the end of this webinar, we hope that you'll be equipped with the knowledge to make your board members have that smooth and efficient transition just so you can continue operations as best as possible. If you have questions, we ask that you please add them to the bottom right of your screen in that questions tab. It's a little bit easier for us to keep track of them that way. I have two of my amazing colleagues working that chat to make sure that it's all updated and we're answering your questions and all of that. So, and then yes, we will be recording and sending that out afterwards. You should get it immediately to your inbox as soon as we wrap up. So if you don't, be sure to reach out and I'll make sure you get that today. So really quickly, we're going to start this conversation with some data so that we can be data informed. So earlier this year, we conducted a customer survey in order to capture more information about nonprofit orgs. One of the questions we asked was about where the organization was spending a substantial amount of their time and energy on. And we discovered that over 80% responded that they're spending most of their time and energy on things like management, recruitment, training, which is just not great, right? When they have their mission to focus on and moving that forward, it's not ideal that they're spending this much amount of resources on these areas. So then we followed that up and asked an additional question of, okay, what areas could you use technology more in your org? And it really aligned that a majority of respondents said the overall operational efficiencies. So clearly there's this need and vision of where technology can help support some of those inefficiencies in organizations so that you're not wasting those times and resources and devote that more towards driving your mission forward. So one of the biggest operational inefficiencies that we hear is board transitions. It just is a huge undertaking that, you know, can be difficult. So Yvette, do you have any experience in board transitions and any issues around that in your experience?
Yeah. So, you know, I think that there has been a real significant shift in my agency and probably across the sector, you know, pre-COVID, post-COVID. So, you know, when COVID came, everybody's tried to pivot, right, and trying to go onto online platforms. I think the learning opportunities of, you know, trying to Zoom, trying to integrate, getting access to board members and to our clients was something that was very important. And then post-COVID, what we found was we had a board pre-COVID, we had 21 member board. And then during COVID, we had 20 of those 21 members roll off. They've took leave of absence. They just found out that their work-life balance, I live in, you know, Drake's home, T-Dot, Toronto, one of the most expensive land housing markets in the world. So I had a lot of my board members that were retiring, taking the equity out of their home, moving out of the region. And so that was a huge disruption for me to try and, you know, off-board 20 board members, having one that would be a board buddy to a whole new a plethora of board coming on. So I think that the whole onboarding procedure, being able to look at and utilizing tools online, when we were accessing and talking to our volunteers, it was really, really clear that people were, you know, looking at their lives and what they're able to do in the volunteer sector. So I knew that hybrid was here to stay. And so how do we sort of manage and make sure that we have an engaged group of volunteers that stay, that you don't have a revolving door? So it was really important to put some processes in and how to use technology to be able to get the best sort of utilization of your time and efforts.
Yeah, that when you told me that story, I was like, wow, that's kind of on the biggest scale, the kind of board transition you do not want to have to deal with at one time, but totally understandable. COVID was a wild time for everyone. So get that. Before we dive in, let's do a quick poll question. We'd love to have you rate, and give me just a second to get this live for everyone. We'd love you to rate your current board transition process. So let us know, do you feel like it's very effective, somewhat effective, neutral, somewhat ineffective? There's some areas of improvement there, or just very ineffective. So if you get a chance, we'd love to see where you think you are. Yeah, so we're getting an interesting mix. So it looks like most people are neutral. We have some that think it's somewhat effective, which is great, because if we're going through this and you have something that's worked for your board, please share it in the chat. We want to make sure this is community knowledge transfer. And if you have something that works, make sure to share it. And then some that are definitely saying somewhat ineffective. So good to see that there's no very ineffective or effective. So interesting mix here. So armed with that information, let's keep going here. So good to see the breakdown here of where you would currently rate your board transition. Interesting to see the data on where some of those operational inefficiencies are. Really quickly, we want to dive into what some of these challenges are. As you can see from the data we shared and some of our own responses, a lot of challenges come with board transitions. And what do those typically include? Having to onboard new members that, if not done efficiently, can really be a resource strain on already tight resources. Difficulty in ensuring that there's a continuity of knowledge and ongoing projects. it's so frustrating if you have to interrupt an ongoing project because of that happening. So it'd be great to be able to continue that forward. Managing the introduction and integration of new members, that can sometimes be a really manual administrative process. So finding ways to make that not so burdensome is ideal. Difficulty in quickly and effectively bringing people up to speed. This kind of goes back to those ongoing projects. The quicker you can get people onboarded and up to speed, the more likely you are to just continue forward on the things that you've already been working on instead of having to start from the beginning. And then if there's gaps in succession plans for critical information and relationships, that can be a big detriment to the organization. So if you think about it this way, several donors and supporters typically come from the board. So you want to ensure that the board members are creating direct relationships with staff and organization outside of just the board, so that when they do fall off, you're able to maintain those relationships and they can continue to support the organization in other ways. Any other challenges that you can think of, Yvette, that you want to share here?
Yeah, I know that for us, it's really important that when we have our board members are what we call the Cadillac volunteer, right? So we have a lot of engaging volunteers that are maybe on our finance committee, on our fundraising committee events. And so they get to know our mission and vision, get to really know the work that we do. And we try and get them engaged between 3 to 6 months before we even consider them onboarding onto becoming a board member. We find that's a good sort of learning period for they can figure out who we are and what we do, and they're able to bring their time, their talent, and their treasure into on a board experience. Because we had such a huge turnover, we decided to do an evergreen onboarding system, so 2 cycles at a time to sort of onboard as you slowly grow back. And we ended up utilizing the document center, which had a really great opportunity to link in some tools or videos or things that you can do to bring people up to speed, because you may have individuals who've had many years of board experience and understood what their role is as a board member. And you could have new board members where this is their first time. And so having sort of background information, best practices, understanding their role, where there is that transition into operations where they keep their vision in and around board fiscal responsibilities. You could put all that sort of onboarding background information. We have a lot of great resources from Board Source as well that we can upload in there, and Robert's Rules and all kinds of templates that you can use. That is very good in bringing people up to speed and knowing where they need help. I think that that's really critical in your succession planning and forming sort of those relationships. You can also put everybody's information that they would like to share. So sometimes you may have, for example, a chartered accountant or a CPA or a COO of a large company, but they want to volunteer, and the last thing they want to do is finance. And so they may be sitting on an event committee or something that you're not even aware of. So having sort of their profile, being able to sort of put their strengths, put some of their designations and links, allows you to sort of build that succession plan, kind of do a board matrix to kind of look to see where your strengths and weaknesses are, and how do you utilize those types of friendships where you can have them come in at an ad hoc or do a training. One of the things that we found that was really great in bringing people up to speed, you can have some amazing talent, large CEOs of companies, but they're not very tech savvy. They had administrative assistant that sort of did all of those types of things. So they were kind of challenged in trying to find where the documentations are and where all the information is. So Boards Source was sort of a great place to have that central repository of documents that you can embed into your agenda, kind of one click, open it up, and it's all there. You didn't have to look to see 5 emails as to where that it actually is, and also in helping in doing some of the minutes and tasks. And I think you'll probably go through that as well. It's sort of in one place where you can kind of click and say, oh, I forgot, was I supposed to do something? And it can also then be pushed out as a reminder to your emails, which is great for me as well, because you can set it up when you wanted to be reminded. So I think that it's really great for different levels of background of how comfortable you are with technology, and sort of helping bringing people up to speed where the gaps are.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you're already dropping some real nuggets of information of how people can do onboarding and offboarding better, because that's awesome. Yeah. Anything to help combat these challenges, because these can really be significant stopping points for an organization if they have to circle back and figure these out. So that being said, let's go ahead and dive into some of these onboarding tips a little bit further. So the first tips that we're going to provide here are more around the preparation that's needed for successful onboarding and recruiting. So we recommend, kind of to what you were just talking about, is starting by assessing the current composition of your board. So figuring out where there's skill gaps or specific attributes that aren't really needed. So this can help if you're recruiting new members. So for example, you can use a tool like custom data collection in Boardable to help gather information on your current board. Find out where those skill sets are. To your point earlier, are they interested in marketing? Are they interested in finance? Do they have that skill set for accounting? Whatever it may be, fill that out so that you have a quick way of figuring out where those gaps are and can help fill them in recruiting those new members who can, better complement your existing team. Creating a detailed onboarding plan. So before you need it, I recommend putting a comprehensive onboarding plan together. Exactly what you were saying. Utilize Boardable's task management, or really anything where you can create a list that's automated to help people understand what tasks are expected from them, help them stay organized, and just be able to help them make sure that nothing's overlooked in that onboarding process. So once you have the onboarding plan created, basically translate it into tasks that can be added to a task manager, and then assign those out to whoever is responsible for them. And then gather all the necessary documents and resources new members will need. So whether it's bylaws, meeting minutes from past meetings, strategic plans, anything that you need that you think that new person needs to have eyes on to help get them up to speed, put those in a dedicated folder. Obviously, we have the document center within Boardable, which can be a great place to store that, but anywhere that they can basically in one click just find all the resources that's going to help them become educated quicker, that's what we're going for. Uh-huh. So once we've gone through the preparation phase, it's time to welcome and orient those new members. So I would start by scheduling an orientation session to introduce new members to the organization, its operations, other members. If it's virtual, if this person is somewhere farther away, you can absolutely use Boardable video or a tool like it to help facilitate that. Share documents easily, store the meeting details so they can reference back to it should they need to. Plus, if you do it this way, even if you're not in the same room, there's still that engagement of being on video together. The other thing you might want to consider is creating shared bios of people. I know I'm really great with faces, but I'm not so great at remembering all the details of everyone that I meet. So it's really great to be able to go back and reference a bio or something that's stored in like a document of members, just to be able to remind myself of, where they work or what they're passionate about, just as a reminder to myself. So something to keep in mind. And then for larger boards, I loved that you mentioned the idea of pairing new members with like a buddy or a mentor that's also on the board, just to be able to guide them through and have like an actual point of contact. It can be a little overwhelming to start somewhere new and not know anyone or anything. So to be able to have like that one person to go directly to with questions, I think is a really good thing to be able to do, to be able to integrate more quickly into the organization.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we did that you might also is do a board buddy training, because not everybody, we tend to assume, so what you think a board buddy does versus someone, for me, what a board buddy may be totally different. And you want to make sure that that sort of experience is sort of shared right across the board. So you can have something very simple where, you know, it can be an informal meeting. You can have a chat to get to know each other for a coffee, but then there are actual things that you tick off with your board buddy that everyone does to have that consistency. I think works really, really well. The other thing that we sort of did with our onboarding or orientation session is we tried to divide it up of kind of like 0 month, this is what you need to do. So in there, we would embed the orientation on how to use Boardable video, or we will put, you know, make sure you fill out your board matrix in where your strengths are. And so we would have little things in there, and then we have month 1, and then you will put all the things that you want to do to have checked off in your orientation, month 2, month 3. So the first 3 months of being a board member, to kind of break it down into bite-sized pieces. You can also send out or push out like a meeting identification. So 0 month meeting identification, go to your document folder and look at those items that you've embedded in there. So it's not an actual meeting. You could set it up so it could be a one-on-one with your board buddy, or it could just be a mention so that in your system it comes up as a meeting notice, but it's just a reminder to tell you, oh, I should go look into things that are already listed in the document folder marked orientation, and then that could take you through. So that's a kind of a clean, systematic way of bite sizing, because what we found is we had binders, we had back in the day floppy disk, everyone get their own you know, there were so many ways. And what we found is even though we gave more and more information, people were not digesting it or even looking at it. They're incredibly busy. And so, you know, in conversations, you know, 2-3 years around, you would say, have you done, you know, your fund development plan? We have a fund development plan. They would go, a what? I don't think I've ever seen it. And you're like, oh, you've been a board member for 2 years and you've never done one. So I think it's those types of bite-sized pieces of going together with a board buddy, checking in while you're in between your board work. It makes it a really sort of gentle check-off way for welcoming and doing an orientation.
I love that. That is excellent feedback. The idea to break it out into phases of orientation, love it. It makes it digestible, and it's almost like a 90-day plan. Here's how to get up and going in 90 days, but it makes it much more manageable knowing that it's kind of broken out like that. I love it. Okay, so as we keep going here, one thing to know that I think is really important is effective training and integration into the board. And I know we've kind of touched on this before with the training sessions, but I think it's important to remember that people could be joining the board at all levels. So they may need to even start a little bit further back in understanding board roles, board governance, responsibilities, things like that. And most of this is probably done, this second bullet, as far as understanding the mission, vision, and strategic goals before they even join. But I think it's important to reiterate those, make sure that everyone starts out on the same page, just to make sure that there's a thorough understanding of expectations, roles, and responsibilities so that everyone kind of starts at a good foundation. And that's never a bad thing to kind of keep reiterating too. And then finally, any tools that you give them access to, platforms like Boardable, make sure that you are doing training sessions around that as well. Not only just giving them access and saying, you know, best of luck, but it really is remembering that some people learn differently. So whether it's sharing, you know, help center articles or live training, because some people just do better when they're connected with an actual person. And then being able to maybe do videos that might work better for someone, where they can pause, actually click through it, and then be able to go back and visit them. So just keep that in mind as you're doing the training and integration into the board and the systems that you use. One thing that I really like to reiterate too is whatever you use as your system of record, so whether it's Boardable or some other platform, make sure that you just from the start, make it a matter of practice. Share documents from there. Make sure you get them access to be able to update their profile right away, because it just makes sure that it stays your system of record, that things aren't happening outside of that to then be brought in. So just a tip there, and maybe providing those training options from the start. Any thoughts there, Yvette?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. I sort of see, some questions in the chat around, having people edit or be users within Boardable. So I have my director of programming. I have my director of volunteer management, and also my communications. They all have admin privileges, and so they can actually go in and help somebody who maybe doesn't know how to set up their profile. They can kind of do that. Or one of the things is that if somebody has really great chair experiences and is going to be a chair of a committee, but they're not very good, user friendly, we can set them up with sort of a template on, this is what a committee meeting looks like, right? This is an agenda, and so that you have sort of the same consistencies from committee to committee to committee, so that you can kind of oversee that and lock it, and they'll use the templates that are provided in the drop down menu, so that not every meeting looks different. Not every meeting is run the same way. And when you have different turnovers or different chairs, it can look differently all the time. So you can kind of set up even and schedule a training on just how to set up an agenda. And I know Boardables actually has that, but you can make it specific to you. You can walk through as a group, have all your chairs walk through and say, how to be an effective, great chair of a committee. And so that everybody's on that same page using the same sort of tools is very helpful. I think when it comes to around the board roles and responsibilities, I think it's also, we have we have a give and a get. There's a financial component for our boards to be financial donors, as well as connecting to their networks, and for them to even set up their own sort of fund development goals. There are ways that you can embed that into the overall plan of how much a board collectively would like to try and raise for an organization, and they can set those up and so that they can revisit it on an ongoing basis. So it's a great way to kind of utilize their responsibilities and keep it foremount in their mind, instead of always having to go back and reiterate it. It's already there. And I think that making sure that what you use and leverage, because I'm very, very big at don't recreate the wheel. And so there are many ways that you can share resources and even connect out to other members that are using the platform to see how they have set things up, and that may work for you.
Yeah, I love that. Anything to be able to not waste energy. If it's already out there, don't recreate it, just work with it. I love that. So the final stage on the onboarding front that we wanted to talk about is just the ongoing engagement and support, to make sure that new members feel valued and productive right from the start, because that's going to keep them engaged. That's going to keep them wanting to come back and provide support. So foster an environment that encourages new members to actively participate. So with Boardable, there's obviously a number of ways to encourage this, but outside of that, even if you just want to use polls to find out where they stand on certain issues, or discussions, chats, to be able to make sure that everyone's staying connected. If they're working on a committee together, for example, they can have those conversations kind of on the side before the board meeting comes together. Just those kind of ways to keep people engaged. And then, excuse me, this is more for if you are doing something with like a video conferencing, review the transcripts and summaries. That way you can evaluate share of voice, see who's maybe not participating in, as much, and maybe there's a way to encourage them to do more so. Maybe they need to see things ahead of time because they kind of need to process before they come back with an opinion or feedback, or maybe there's just a way to kind of make the environment a little bit more engaging. The other thing that you can do is use analytics and reporting features to be able to provide insights on those member engagement data points as well. Kind of going back to that, see who's engaged regularly, see who's not, maybe reach out to those who aren't, and just see how you can help them feel more comfortable in being able to do that. And then just keep an eye on your new members, keep an eye on the progress that they're making, check in with them, see if there's ways that you can get them either back on track if they've kind of, sunken in, or if there's ways to just continue to encourage that ongoing engagement. So that's what we have for onboarding. Yvette, anything else before we switch to offboarding?
Yeah, no, I think that that's brilliant. I mean, one of the things that we did in sort of our board retreat and getting to know each other better is we all did a Myers-Briggs just to kind of look to see our learning styles and how we communicate and how we're different. It gave us a real insight as to, how some people are delayed processors that need to sort of think and take a few days. So we've implemented certain things that making sure that all documents before a meeting are available in the agenda, at least between, I think it's 10 days prior to the meeting. So it allows people to sort of take their time to go in and look at it. There are still some people that will, look at it the 5 minutes before the meeting, right? And are able to go ahead. But I think that that's a great way of making sure that you check in, giving people that opportunity, like you said, in that the transcripts to kind of see who are your chatty Cathys, right? Or telling Tims, I don't know.
Yeah, I hear you.
Opportunity that you want to make sure that maybe you can pose certain types of questions or engage or ask people to lead sections on your agenda that maybe are quieter for them to. And I think that that's making sure that it's a welcoming, safe space and that everybody feels like their opinions and are bringing value to the table and have opportunities to be heard. So I think that a lot of times people feel like an opening, welcoming space and making people feel heard is a round robin of putting you on the spot and say, do you have anything to add? Well, I asked her and she said nothing, is not a way of making people feel engaged and safe. It's making sure that you are meeting them where they're at, and that takes some time. And so utilizing some tools to be able to do that in different formats and ways. That's why the chat is great. If I don't feel comfortable putting my hand and being on camera, I may have something on the side that I can send to someone. I can address with my board buddy before the meeting, or you can say, following up, here are times where we can set up a chat or an informal meeting that's documented so that you don't miss comments or issues that maybe have arose within the meeting.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, if you do round robin for some people, they're just going to clam up even more. That can be kind of intimidating for some folks, but I do like the idea of making sure there's other ways for them to be engaged for sure. Okay, so let's transition over to some offboarding tips really quick, see if we can help so that when departing members leave, it doesn't completely disrupt the board's workflow. So one thing you can do is plan for departures. So just as important as an onboarding plan, you need an offboarding plan really, so that you can prepare and facilitate the knowledge transfer easier. So make sure that it includes critical tasks and responsibilities of the departing member so that you're able to make sure that those get transitioned to someone and there's not a gap in that happening. Make sure that you clearly communicate with that departing member what the expectations are. And I think that's why the offboarding plan is really helpful, because it gives you a place to kind of document all of that and then just walk them through the checklist of things that you need in planning for their transition to make sure that it goes smoothly. And then just make sure that you encourage opportunities for those departing board members to stay engaged and make sure that they feel like there's an opportunity to continue to serve the organization, because if they're passionate about it enough to be, on the board, surely they'll want to continue that support moving forward. So make sure that you have their updated contact information in your people directory at all times so that you can just make sure to have that and be able to reach out if there's a need at some point.
I love that. I just wanted to pipe in there. So you're allowed to have 3 2-year terms in our bylaws, and then you need to take a year sabbatical. So you have to step off the board, trying to get new, fresh blood. But you can stay on a committee. And I think that for me to see success on the board, for example, I've had a board president that has done two terms at 10 years apart. This last president was exactly the same, has done some amazing things, has come back to volunteer. We often joke that we try and make our our agency like Hotel California. You can check out, but you can never leave. And so keeping them engaged and coming back and offering new skills, I think is amazing to sort of see. And so planning for that departure and seeing how they can be engaged. And they often go and may sit on so many other boards in our community, and then we'll circle back. And I think that is a great testament on making sure that the offboarding process, you want to come in, you want to be engaged, you want to give the most of your time, talent, and treasure, and it doesn't want to feel like a life sentence and burning out, right? And so I think that's important to set things in for that transition plan.
Yeah, I love that. And maybe instead of offboarding plan, we call it the Hotel California plan, so that they know we'll probably be reaching back out. Okay, so knowledge transfer. This is such an important piece because you don't want to lose the valuable information and critical documents that have already been completed. So we recommend scheduling a series of meetings between the departing member and either their successors or other relevant board members to make sure that they're transferring the essential knowledge, sharing those critical documents, giving access to who needs it, and then just discussing any ongoing projects. Don't forget that. If there's something that they're currently working on or, have been for a while and just have some of that knowledge about it, make sure that gets transitioned to keep that moving forward. In addition, make sure that ongoing projects and responsibilities are clearly documented. So make sure that you're not just saying it, which can be great. And especially if you use a video conferencing tool, you can have those transcripts to be able to reference back to. But make sure it's documented as well, and that it lives in one of those folders that are so precious to keep that valuable information in. And then again, you can always use like a task management kind of tool of some kind to be able to track those responsibilities and make sure that nothing falls through the cracks before they depart. And then I think we mentioned this before, but I really love this idea. Consider cross-training opportunities. This is going to make sure that members gain insights into different roles, different responsibilities. So if someone is departing, you're able to have that wealth of knowledge. So it's not just living in one person. It could potentially live in a couple of other people because they've been able to cross-train on their role and responsibility. So for example, if you have a finance committee member, have them cross-train with, somebody in marketing or governance or events or something, just to be able to give them that intel and be able to make your just board more strong and knowledgeable. And I think it also helps a little bit with kind of accountability and compassion because they can better understand what that other person is working on and dealing with. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. I think that also if you can sort of document or use, the recording feature in Boardable is so amazing because a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. So we even started out with a webinar that we did, how to read financial statements. And so when we're done with our audited financial statements, we will use that as a platform. We will make a PowerPoint presentation and kind of look at the real data that they're looking at and raise questions and flags of, what would be a concern as a board member? What should you be looking out at? What should you highlight? Obviously, sometimes the answers are in the notes section that the auditor put in, but it's allowing people to know what you're looking at, what you are responsible for, and are there any sort of flags? If you're a finance person, it seems very second nature, and sometimes it could be quite daunting if you're not used to looking at financial statements. So we make sure that it's done. We have a CPA that kind of goes through it, but somebody that actually talks, I always say talks English, but not finance speak, that allows people for it to be digestible. That's a great cross training opportunity where you can have people that might be interested, and we encourage people without a finance background to also sit on our finance committee, because they ask those questions that a lot of times that are not that transparent, right? So that then it becomes understandable for everybody, for our donors. We are clear and transparent, and we post things on our website as well. So we want to make sure that we're forward facing, outward facing, and not just internal facing, kind of saying we're doing a great job, right? So that's a great opportunity to cross train and also grow skill sets that people then will want to sort of, maybe that they're trying to sort of develop. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great example. Moving forward, we're coming up to time. It goes till 12:45. Feel free to jump. I know we'll continue recording to be able to send this out afterwards, but we obviously want to be cognizant of everyone's schedule. So exit interviews can be a great way to collect feedback. If you get the opportunity to be able to do one of these with a departing member, I encourage it. I think it's a great way to look for candid feedback on areas of improvement. And maybe they've been providing it all along, but if not, this is a great way for them to be able to share. And again, a video conferencing tool is a great way to have that face-to-face connection before they go. And then, of course, we always encourage analyzing that feedback, actually putting it into actionable practices and processes to improve the experience for current and future board members. And then we've kind of talked about this as well, but to be able to create that ongoing culture and community around your organization, we recommend recognizing that person, celebrating them, making sure that there's an opportunity to share the achievements and contributions that they've had to the board. And there's obviously, it'd be great to be able to do that in person, but if you're not able to, there are tools like discussion and the broadcast feature in Boardable to be able to share that person is leaving and to obviously welcome new members as well. So a couple of ways to do that virtual if you're not able to do that in person, especially if you're in a hybrid situation. And then really quickly, we wanted to touch on handling unexpected departures, because as we heard from the previous example, something like COVID could make people it's too much going on. I have to take a step back. It's unintended, but it has to happen, which happens. So immediate next steps, don't panic. We can plan for this. And I know that's easier said than done because it throws a wrench into things. And I get that as a worrier, I get that to my core. But there are some tips that we can do to make this a little bit better. So first, just making sure that you assess the immediate impact. What's going to be impacted from responsibility and ongoing projects that's kind of this needs to be addressed ASAP. This can be mitigated if you're able to create like a checklist beforehand of what that person is responsible for. But if not, definitely make sure you get an opportunity to do that with them before they're able to leave. And then just communicate promptly with your remaining board members and staff. It just creates that transparency that can be so crucial during a time like this. And then making sure that you address how that gap's going to be filled. Next, consider some interim solutions. And we talked about this a little bit, and kind of having those people on the back burner that might be able to step up and fill in. So maybe it's a past board member, maybe it's a qualified volunteer who's really shown a lot of engagement with the organization, might be passionate about stepping in to make sure that there's not a huge disruption with that person stepping away. And then we've talked about this all along, but making sure that you store in folders, in areas of convenience, those important documents, meeting minutes, all of those kinds of things, so that when someone does leave, they're easily accessible. One other thing to consider as someone offboards, but definitely if it's kind of a quick situation that they're leaving, is to remember to revoke their access from things when it's appropriate. And that can kind of be missed sometimes if you're like, oh, they're leaving, what to do. So just make sure to add that to your list as well. And then this is to ensure kind of that ongoing stability should something like this come up, but make that list of potential board candidates, keep that available, just so if something does happen, you're able to reference that pretty quickly. That can easily be updated in a list that's stored in the documents as well. Anything else here that you would add?
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think our continuing planning is part of our board development committee, where we have that in evergreen onboarding. So
Yes.
you can have something like frequently asked questions for board candidates. You can have that up on your website so people understand how long that process is going to take. We also have a leave of absence policy. So, there have been a lot of bereavement, maybe a death in a family, a health concern, a maternity leave that you didn't expect when you onboarded, all kinds of places where then you can put a time when the person has left and when they're coming back. That can be in a document that everyone can sort of see, and then that cross-pollination of people who are taking on that role during their leave of absence. So, any sort of board where we do exit interviews or connections is usually done by our board chair. And we also have a governance committee, our board development committee, and they can take on that task. So right now we have, I believe, 6 board candidates that we're looking at to onboard by our August evergreen onboarding system. So our board development committee will each take turns to do board interviews, and we have questions that we ask for each one. So that, again, it's not subjective, and so that we can kind of make sure that we're maintaining that pipeline of qualified candidates, and we're ready to sort of fill vacancies. And you can say, oh, you may not be ready for this on evergreen onboarding system. We can consider you maybe in the February onboarding. So that's how we've sort of handled it. So you're continually sort of filling that pipeline.
I love that. I love being able to hear that put into practice and actually the process behind it. So thank you for sharing. And then lastly, we won't dive into this too much. I feel like we've been talking this all along, but it's just making sure to provide that ongoing support for the remaining board members, understanding that they might have new responsibilities added to their role. So just being able to make sure that they have the training and support that they need, and then just that ongoing reassurance. So for those still remaining, thank you. And we're going to ask another poll question really quickly. So let me get this up. But we'd like to know what boardable feature would be most beneficial as you're improving your board's transition process. So we would just like to know, just from listening today, or what you already may know about Boardable. And if you're completely unfamiliar, just let us know what you think might be the most suitable. Yeah, so seeing some document storage for sure, engagement tracking definitely. Yeah, document storage is just kind of flying to the front, which is no surprise, right? Being able to store those important documents in dedicated folders that's organized, making it easier for people to access them right away, and the more consistent you can be with naming of those things too is going to be helpful, because then people can come and just quickly find what they're looking for, whether it's onboarding or orientation or, a certain committee that they're involved in. So really important to have some organization there. And then we're going to introduce Jenny. She's our Director of Product Marketing. She's going to hop on and give us a little sneak peek at what's coming at Boardable, which is always exciting. And then she'll help close this out.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for letting me join. This was a great webinar. I learned a lot and a lot of good questions over in the chat. Any questions that we didn't get to, David and myself, we will make sure that we get those followed up with as well. But thanks so much, Yvette, for being here. And this was really, really great to listen to. I did just want to do a quick overview of a few features. One of these came up a lot, actually, in the chat. So we'll highlight that a little bit. But first up, if you haven't updated or downloaded the Boardable mobile app, we had some major upgrades about a month ago, or actually a couple of months at this point. Time flies, I guess, when you're doing so many fun things. But there's more functionality for both users and admins within the app, and there's also Face ID and push notifications. So I think a lot of the themes of today were meeting board members where they are and, providing a lot of different routes. And I think that just making sure that your board members are enabled with the mobile app is a great place to start. Boardable Video, if you haven't tried Boardable Video, this is the biggest product that we've kind of released this year. And it really is replaced all of Spotlight and leverages AI to have the ability to use transcripts and also have meeting summaries and key action items as a result of that. So really great tool. Highly encourage you to give it a try. Even if you're kind of a diehard user of another video conferencing platform, the integrated experience with Boardable Video is really top notch. Custom data collection. So the ability to, at the user level, collect information on your board members and your committee members. This information can be submitted by them, or it can be filled out by you as the admin. So it's a really flexible kind of data collection tool. And then that information is always stored along with that user. And you can run reports against that as well. So whether it's DEI initiatives or various other things that you might want to be collecting that onboarding data with, we always like in demos, it's not the best example, but we also were like dietary preferences and, things like that are all great to utilize tools like custom data collection. And then our reimagined meeting experience is coming soon. So our team's been really hard at work on this and really just trying to make it easier, more efficient for you to create a meeting and host a meeting and all of those things. So outside of the actual video conferencing portion, really the before and after and a little bit of the during experience as well. We're also, adjusting like we all have, to kind of hybrid and more fully in-person meetings and making sure that experience reflects where a lot of our customers are kind of on that continuum. So really great webinar, guys. And hopefully these updates are exciting for some of our customers. And if you're not a customer, we do have a free trial and would encourage you to take advantage of that. That's all I have. We do also have an innovation webinar coming up. Sorry, I said that's all I have, but we do have that innovation webinar coming up next month where we will dig into that meeting experience and share that with everybody as well. And I do want to, it is really great, but it's also easier to use, not harder to use. So for those admins that are like, oh gosh, please don't change things, I promise this is a positive change. It is a big change, but it's easy to figure out and to utilize as well. So we'll see you in July for that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for sticking on. We won't take questions since we are over the time that we allotted, but I think the team's been able to answer most of them. If not, we will absolutely follow up with you afterwards. Yvette, thank you so much for joining us. The knowledge you brought to us today was just so impactful. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Talk soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.